Hello, welcome to Wildest's RPGaDay 2018, Day 12. Wildest character concept. I'll admit that much of my concepts, whether as a player or as a GM, were derivative. I'm sure most everybody's are derivative in some way or another. Mine were more obvious just because when I see something cool, either in a movie or read a book, I'm going to port that into my ideas. As a player, I played it safe for the most part and played simple characters, and a majority of them were a hunter of some kind, bounty hunter, undead hunter, werewolf hunter, vampire hunter, that kind of thing. I like to play somebody with a target so that the GM, if he felt so inclined, he could throw that in as an extra motivation for me. Most of those concepts were either fairly derivative, like I said, or just nothing I would call wild. As a GM, I came up with some interesting, if not wild, I wouldn't call them wild, but interesting characters as antagonists to the party. Again, most of them were derivative in some fashion or another. One that stands out in my mind is an evil team of force-using things in Star Wars. I saw these figures. It was McFarlane that I bought them from, and they were the Lost Souls, inspired by Clive Barker's stories, and they're basically Cenobite-like creatures from Hellraiser. There were several of them, but I picked 4 of them that were pretty harrowing and horror-based to bring into Star Wars and then create a whole concept around them. I created a third side of the Force called Chaos Side. And because, D6 and D20 really kind of treated or made the Force users and all that kind of have an alignment of dark side, light side, I said, why not a Chaos Side? This was before episode 1, 2, and 3, when they started dealing with the silliness that is the balance of the Force or whatever, which I hated, and one of the reasons why I got out of running Star Wars. But regardless, they were pretty radical in my approach. I had been running Star Wars for several years and decided to go down a path that was a little more original and perhaps not so Star Wars-y. My players seemed to enjoy it. I think 1 or 2 of them did mention that it started to feel less Star Wars and more horror. But I was taking Star Wars down a more serious path. I took it seriously, which is again why I was so disappointed in the prequels and so disappointed in the recent stuff. And so those, I felt they were wild in the fact that I took Star Wars down kind of a Hellraiser path. In hindsight, I admit that's more my preferences thrown into Star Wars than what I really think Star Wars should be. I integrated some of my own self into the game itself. And yeah, we all do that. So I made it my own. And we had a lot of fun with it. That was about a 1.5 year, maybe 2-year campaign that ended on a nasty planet, and they had to fight the chaos side of the Force and keep it from coming in and taking over. One other wild character concept for an NPC, or at least interesting to some degree, was a driving force in a campaign, Shatter Zone. If I were to answer an alternate prompt in the list, this character, or this NPC, would be in the story that involved a great retirement of a character. These guys couldn't kill him. The character sacrificed himself in the end to finally destroy him. He had a very complex name, but in the end, we just called him Guts. In Shatterzone, there was a period of time where, much like in Star Trek, where Khan, he was a superhuman created during a time when people were getting modified, making superhumans. Well, in Shatterzone, they called them Crom Returns, and they were superhuman enhanced, but also overly cybered, and there was a big war, and Crom Returns were used. They represented a super cybered soldier. These guys ended up going crazy, and the program was retired, but they left many of them off. They abandoned the soldiers. Didn't kill them, didn't imprison them, they just abandoned them. I guess maybe they were hunted down. I don't remember exactly the full story, but and that was centuries before the current timeline of the setting. The characters in my campaign found, or hunted down, or part of the campaign found a tomb of a Crom Return named Guts. And to their surprise, his soul was saved within the cybernetics that his body contained. Eventually, Guts, his soul, transferred to their ship, and their ship became a haunted ship for practically the entire campaign. For a long time, I just used him as an annoyance, something fun, a means to complicate things. Eventually, he took over the full ship, and that's how the retirement came in. A character got a hold of another ship or a ground vehicle of some kind, not a ground vehicle, but a flying vehicle of some kind, and they played chicken, and they both lost him. Guts was, and I continued to develop his story, and they ended up going down some paths that involved his story. But he was a fun character to mess with, and we always had references back to Guts, because they were always concerned that their ship would get possessed again in every campaign after that. Not another Guts. And yeah, sometimes I tended to rehash ideas in a different way, and I just, that was so fun that I couldn't just do it once. So I did similar things later. So those are two character concepts that I did. I'm sure they're not very original, and like I said, they were sort of derivative. I mean, my advice to anybody that's looking for wild character concepts, there are no original ideas anymore. They're just tweaked from original ideas. So don't be afraid to try something different, something new, even though you might have seen it before. You know, I had a character that was basically Wolverine, but slightly different. I kind of combined Wolverine with the character Blade, and instead of a vampire hunter, he was a werewolf hunter. I called him Tyr, based him on the Norse god, so there's a little bit of Thor thrown in there. I kind of loved that depth of that character. He lost his hand, replaced it with a silver blade, and he hunted werewolves. He was a Champions character I played for a little while. I also wrote some stories on him because I loved his background. He wasn't bitten by a werewolf. His mother was raped by a werewolf and was impregnated, so now Tyr was half werewolf and was always trying to keep that under control. And yeah, again, derivative. Most of that was Blade's story. I don't even think I knew Blade at the time. I didn't know the Blade story. So I thought it was original, but turns out it wasn't. So, like I said, no original ideas out there. And another character that wasn't was very derivative, as I was a big Highlander fan. You know, Immortals, there can be only one. So I created a character and I wrote about him, and I played him in World of Darkness for a little while, and then Champions, I think. Probably not. Mostly World of Darkness, and actually did some LARPing with him. He was a vampire hunter. We had integrated the Immortals into the World of Darkness, and for my sake, and I played him. But again, not very original. He was fun to play. So I ended up talking about more than I had planned on, but that's what this is all about. So having conversations about RPGs and their great experiences we've had. I hope it was at least entertaining and maybe insightful. Until next time, seek the wolf in thyself.